Every country in the world has its own salt story. Governments were always drawn to taxing salt because everybody used it, and there were always more poor people than rich people, and was always controversial. The central question of salt is how something that is often viewed as a simple ingredient could have had such influence on past societies, and how salt helped shape modern-day life. Why something as abundant as salt has been treated as if it were a precious, scarce resource. Empires were not formed by search for gold or silver or other precious commodities, but for salt, which was accessible to everyone. All through history, availability of salt has been pivotal to civilization. In Britain, the suffix wich in a place name means it was once a source of salt, as in Sandwich and Norwich. Salzburg, Austria, was named the city of salt for its mines. Ancient economies founded on salt persist into modern day, and catalogues the inventions and innovations that have resulted as byproducts of producing salt and searching for it. The following is a brief history of salt and its effects on world history. China. Salt production and salt taxes played key roles in Chinese history, economic development, and relations between state and society. The lure of salt profits led to technological innovation and new ways to organize capital. In ancient China, the state had a system where they raised money to build many great projects, including the Great Wall. However, private salt trafficking arose because monopoly salt was more expensive and of lower quality, so local bandits and rebel leaders thrived on salt smuggling. Over time, this basic system of bureaucratic oversight and private management yielded revenue second only to the land tax. Ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians used salt during the mummification process and also added it to their food, and are the first to conserve meat with salt, producing the first types of bacon. Some believe it to be one of the first cultures to use salty meats and salted fish. They are also the first to eat the fruits of the olive soaked in water and a lot of salt. Gaul and Celtic tribes. The Gauls and Celt tribes were responsible for the drilling and excavation of primitive salt mines. When they were conquered by the Romans, Rome absorbed the salt apparatus, and they had constructed, expanded them, and reaped the profits, and would expand the scale of the salt industry to a degree previously unknown. Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is very important in the history of salt. As the Roman Empire swept across Europe, its armies required salt, both for the men and their horses, which led to a greater need for salt production. Roman soldiers were partly paid in salt, which is where we get the word soldier, as in sal dare, meaning to give salt. From the same source, we get the word salary, salarium. Salt was a vital commodity to the Roman army, and this demand would have been met by establishing military salt works. Middle Ages. Salt in the Middle Ages was a staple of Europe. Meat and fish was the primary source of food. Because meat could not be eaten on fast days, of which there were many, the meat had to be preserved, which was accomplished by curing with salt. Italy. Every major city on the Italian peninsula was founded on salt. Rome developed where a salt trade route crossed the river Tiber, en route to the coast, near the 7 hills the city is said to be built on. American Revolution. Salt shortages, followed by a salt inequity, caused a great deal of unrest in America, and combined with unjust taxation on salt and other commodities, contributed to the American Revolution. France. The Gabelle was a duty payable on salt and was an essential commodity in 18th century France. The Gabelle applied to all purchases of salt, whether for private or commercial use. The Gabelle was unevenly applied, however, and varied wildly from place to place. By the 1780s, the Gabelle raised more than 55 million livres per annum, or more than 10% of the royal government's taxation revenue. The Gabelle was widely unpopular because it was payable by everyone, including peasants. It was also very difficult to avoid. This unfair tax would eventually lead to the overthrow of the French monarchy in 1789. India gains its independence from British rule after a long struggle that involves the peaceful demonstrations of Gandhi. Gandhi made the oppressive salt tax of the British Crown a symbol of his defiance and encouraged his followers to do the same. Hence, the now famous Salt March, which took place from March to April 1930, was an act of civil disobedience led by Gandhi to protest British rule in India.